Hello, YouTube. Not feeling very photogenic today, so I decided to approach this matter from a nice, weird angle, I guess. This is going to be a brush up on how to better debate Manhood Academy for all my men going their own way out there. We're going to start with some very simple points. First of all, it has become painfully obvious that it's not conducive to a proper debate forum to challenge Academy on his own site. He exercises very stringent moderator responsibilities, in which case he could override your talking points by just shutting your mic off. Furthermore, it seems that his platform does little more than gives him an avenue to monologue about how he's been wronged by the MGTOW community, causing many a debater, quote unquote, to spend excess amount of time apologizing for the actions of other people, and that is not what MGTOW is about. So with that said, here are the top 3 criticisms I have and ways to alleviate said problems. Number 1, as I said before, it's not your responsibility to apologize for trolls. There are many MGTOWs out there who live only to say poo-poo caca on the internet. It's not my duty, it's not my cause celeb, it's not my raison d'etre to say Boogerfoot 2000, you shouldn't curse so much. No. If an individual wants to say all women should die, you could probably criticize the individual, but it's not your job to claim responsibility for what he said. There is no hegemonic MGTOW to apologize for, so why would you spend 20 minutes or allow Academy 20 minutes to talk about, oh, how this person said X and this person said Y? Your job is to represent yourself and why you believe that male sovereignty is important. Argument number 2, the nature of nihilism. In regards to masculinity, there is no singular definition of what constitutes a male. The complete analytical definition of masculinity means that you are an adult male, thus you are a man. Nothing else should be brought up otherwise. On an esoteric level, manhood was given to you by God. It is not Manhood Academy's job to tell you if you are not a man or not. That is God's job. And I know there's a lot of atheists in this community, but believe me, the chaos of the universe does allow for a somewhat embodiment of your spiritual likeness, and you could call it God. But what I'm trying to tell you is Manhood Academy didn't give you your manhood. Manhood Academy can't take it away. So it's not for him to define form and function. There is no real definition of masculinity. Me personally, you know how I define masculinity? I define masculinity as a false projection of strength, confidence, and assertiveness with the express purpose of avoiding ridicule, maintaining social capital, and acquiring female validation. That is masculinity in my eyes. Bernard Chapin, he said masculinity is courage in the face of adversity, and I could get behind that too. You have to be courageous, but sometimes you have to wing it. In that, masculinity is not a solid science, so it's not really a strong suit. It's not really a strong foundation to base your opinions on. After all, masculinity would dictate that you ignore your cancer. Masculinity would dictate that you ignore your depression and just put your head down and keep boxing with that 800-pound gorilla called life, never admitting that you're hurt. Nihilism is a recognition that everyone has a definition for everything. and there is no grand authority to tell them otherwise. You might not like a transvestite saying that I am a real man. He might not like you referring to him as a transvestite, but in his mind, he is a real man, and I got too much time on my hand to convince him otherwise. My masculinity is mine, yours is yours. Manhood Academy's masculinity is Manhood Academy's masculinity. Third, the nature of power. This is the biggest gaping hole in Manhood Academy's philosophy. He believed in a set of unified principles that guarantees that men will have power over women. I don't. There is no such power. In Western civilization, women have power over men. Women have power to, shocking as it may seem, validate the very existence of men just by condoning their companionship. This is one of the greater things that MGTOW seeks to terminate. Power, as I've said so many times before, is the ability to make someone do something despite their own will. Power is the ability to control other people. Men's rights activists want political power. PUAs want sexual power. MGTOWs don't want power. We want agency. We want the power to affect change in our own lives. In our own lives. Once again, let me say that, in our own lives. There were two prominent male academics when we discussed matters of feminism and masculinism, as it were. And they are Dr. Warren Farrell and the notorious Hugo Schweizer. Dr. Warren Farrell came up with the theory of the myth of male power. And he said, since women are treated as genetic celebrities, men are at oftentimes helpless to stand up to the oppressive demands of women and to tolerate their less than admirable qualities. Hugo Schweizer, who, when he's not a sexually ravenous, abusive, alcoholic scumbag / male feminist, supplicant, bootlicking son of a bitch, he came up with a very rational monicum called the myth of male weakness, probably to spite Warren Farrell. I guess he wanted to be the feminist version of Warren Farrell. Well, anyway, I could talk all day about Hugo Schweizer, but Professor Schweizer came up with the myth of male weakness, which is encompassing theory that men are not weak to the biological imperative, as in see genetic celebrity, female, act like a obsessed groupie, act like a fan. We do not need to capitulate to women just because they're nude and crying. We do not need to capitulate to women just because they're so pretty. We do not need to capitulate because society tells us that our job is to capitulate to women. We are MGTOW. We go our own way. That is the nature of the beast. Now, I know it is hard to argue on behalf of nihilism and isolationism, and basically what you're doing is you're arguing for being a party pooper. But that's what you have to do as a MGTOW. That's what you have to do when you're debating Manhood Academy. That's what you have to do maybe in your own life when it's necessary. Relationships are good. Two minds are better than one. A loving companion, a good woman is a divine thing. You know, the Bible says if you find yourself a good woman, you find yourself a good thing. And of course, you know, hell, with a name like Louis Cyphre, I know my way around the Bible. But there are so many counterfeits out there. There are so many disingenuous women out there. Gentlemen, MGTOWs, you're debating Manhood Academy. Recognize that 1, it's not your job to apologize. 2, nihilism conquers all. 3, power cannot be granted to a man just because he says, I am a man and you women will do what I say, because society has a very, very, very efficient way of telling you otherwise, and it's called the divorce, VAWA, you name it. Women have legitimate authority. You have the ability to inflict violent conflict on her, and that is it. That is it, my friends. If you want to withhold your affection and your companionship from a woman, that's fine. But please remember mathematics of manhood. Rule number 7, don't ever underestimate the power of a woman to land on her feet by jumping on the next motherfucker's meat. Okay? It's a little misogynistic, so, but it is the truth. MGTOWs are arguing on behalf of male sovereignty. We do know that our backs are up against the wall between homophobia and competition. We do know that we're the last line of defense. MGTOW, in essence, is your mother's couch. It's safe and warm. It offers no judgment, and it only offers support. But that's what MGTOW is for. Men going their own way is not to doesn't have to justify itself to someone peddling pickup artist / traditional conservative dogma. We are men. No one could take that away from us. If we want to move forward from where we are, we will. If we don't, we don't. If we want to find happiness on ourselves as a means to our own ends, that's what we will do. There's no debate. Manhood Academy, if the MGTOWs that you run into are easily swayed by shaming tactics, you could have them. You could definitely have them. But for the most part, I think MGTOW will grow. Despite its detractors, despite all the criticisms lobbed at it. Is that everything? Oh, one more thing. Elliot Rodger was a pussy-worshipping sycophant. If he would have ran through one MGTOW message board, he would have never done what he did. Furthermore, Elliot Rodger's father was not only a real man, but he was the perfect example of a man going his own way. This is a man who stood at the barrel of stood at the barrel of AK-47s and demanded to speak with the world's most dangerous terrorists, of which he made a documentary. And that's how he made his money. He took his manhood. He said, fuck women. I'm going to go find out what Islamic terrorists have to say. And they spoke to him and they talked to him. And he made a living that provided a luxury car for his wife and his kids. And he promoted an era of masculinity that his son could never achieve. Elliot Rodger could never be the man that his father was, because he was raised by his mother. Elliot Rodger had the unmitigated gall to drive around in his father's BMW and live off of his mother's genetic good looks, and thought that was enough to prove his masculine capital. Fuck him. I hope he is burning in hell. I would resuscitate the motherfucker myself and shoot him in the face. He is not MGTOW. He's not MRA. Any association with Elliot Rodger is proof of one's insanity. Don't ever equate Elliot Rodger with MGTOW ever again. That was a sidetrack, but hey, this is just a impromptu rant. I'm your boy Louis Cypher, and I'm a MGTOW. Peace.